Welcome to A Ride on the Outside. MMA is full of people on the inside, but what about the ones that watch from beyond? Welcome to the MMA Outsiders with Tom Albano and Zain Bando on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
It's part two. Yes, part two. Episode 62 here at the MMA Outsiders. I'm Tom Albano. That's Zain Bando. Zain, we had our little recap. You talked about your live experience with Bellator. We said our little just in case goodbyes, and we will dearly miss Bellator if that was indeed the last show. It's great it went out with a bang if that was the last show. But Zain, the MMA world, I hate saying it, but the MMA world moves on. You know, the wheel in the sky keeps on moving, as Journey once sang. And we got to keep moving ourselves. Big PFL card this weekend. And I'm wearing my PFL shirt out of pride.
Yeah, you're definitely wearing your PFL shirt out of pride for sure. And this is the second straight year that PFL is experimenting with Black Friday. So most certainly it should be a very interesting spectacle, if you will, taking place in Washington, D.C. instead of the traditional Hulu Theater at Madison Square Garden. But before we get into all of that and so much more, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network across social media at ETB Network. Be sure to follow this very show, the MMA Outsiders, at MMA Outsiders ETB across social media platforms. Again, my name is Zain Bando. I am a staff writer at BJPen.com and also the newest Sunday news writer for MMA Knockout, and I am still currently a Bellator rankings panelist, although I do not know how much longer that will last, and if it only will last a few days, but that is technically still part of it as well. And then, of course, to my left is Tom Albano. You can find his work over now at MMA News, and of course, concurrently over at Fansided MMA, and he will be on duty this weekend remotely doing the live results for the PFL website, so stay tuned for up to the minute news and reactions on everything PFL. Go to pflmma.com and you can find all of Tom's work there, as it is the biggest PFL event of the year, given that it is the PFL World Championships. So it's good to be back for part two, episode 62, a little bit more of a loose and relaxed vibe here. Whereas part one of episode 62 had a little bit more of a somber feel to it, given the uncertainty of Bellator and what its future might hold. But as Tom alluded to, we have to focus on the present, which means PFL takes precedent this weekend. It'll be on a special date, Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. You're gonna get professional MMA. No, not on Saturday night, but on Friday night for the second straight year. The PFL will take center stage across the MMA world. So, Tom, I guess before we get into the card and everything, what do you think of PFL experimenting with this Black Friday scenario? Once again, ESPN Plus pay-per-view being the backdrop. Kind of tell me how you're feeling going into this event, and what do you think?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, I know part of this week's Zain is going to be a little outside the cage news as well when you consider the report of, like we talked about during part one, that the expectation is on the weigh-in day, which would be on Thanksgiving. The PFL will have a press conference to announce it's officially acquired Bellator. I think Al Zolino actually reported yesterday on Sunday that the total is going to be somewhere between like 200 and 300 million dollars. So, but ultimately, like we kind of alluded to, at this point, we will get to that once it officially becomes official. I guess is the best way to describe it on Thanksgiving. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. You know, it's Black Friday. It's my first PFL World Championships where I'm actually doing work for the promotion. You know, it's been an amazing 2023 with them. I hope they bring me back for 2024. If not, you know, it's been an absolutely incredible experience getting to do the 2023 season with them, both on the global stage and on the PFL Europe stage, and the PFL Europe Championships also still to come, which will take place in early December. I'm excited. Like, these are some six matchups that I'm really interested in. The prelims themselves, by the way, are great too. Granted, one of the championship matchups we're going to preview today is the prelim main event. But on the opening up the card, we're not going to talk about the non-title fights, but just I want to make mention that I'm Kayla Harrison's taking on Aspen Ladd. Opening up the main card, you're going to have the PFL debut with Derek Brunson. He's taking on the former champ, Ray Cooper III. And you got Bubba Jenkins and Chris Wade going against each other on the prelims, which those two are always fun. So, and then of course I'd be remiss, Diageo Ali Walsh in another one of his amateur MMA fights.
For sure, very well said. Even though we aren't going to directly talk about them, I will say anything that involves the return of Kayla Harrison is going to be fireworks. So that is can't miss TV if you're someone that's been waiting very patiently over the last year to see Kayla Harrison compete. This upcoming Friday is your chance to do just that. But yeah, yet again, the PFL stacks the card. This is huge. It's obviously the extravaganza to end the season, and they want to pull out as many of the stops as possible, and it seems like they're doing just that.
And I want to add, I do like what they're trying to do, make Black Friday. I mean, Zan, let's be real. The last several years, it has seemed like the NHL has been the Black Friday, the Thanksgiving weekend kind of king when it comes to at least the Friday and the Saturday. Obviously, the NFL is going to have the Thursday and the Sunday, but you got the NFL now, who's going to have the Black Friday game before the PFL pay-per-view on Amazon Prime, and you got the PFL, who's trying to establish, I guess, Black Friday as their championship state. I kind of like it.
Yeah, I kind of like it too, and it's a smart business move considering that you're not competing with Saturday rivalry weekend in college football.
That's true too. That's true. That actually is very smart. My question, Sam, I want to know from the perspective of somebody who, a fellow MMA media member, somebody who doesn't have affiliation with the PFL like I do. I want to know your thoughts on them going with the pay-per-view format again and pricing it at, I think it's $49.99 when there isn't any other MMA competition on that night.
I personally think it's a bad business model for the sole purpose that I just don't think the PFL, and this is no offense to them, they're doing the best they can. But when it comes to pay per view, I just don't think anybody can rival what the UFC does in the MMA space with their perfection of the production value that they have, with all the different features that they do, with the way that they're so in tune with social media. I feel like PFL is slowly but surely getting there. I think the Francis signing in the way that was covered from a social aspect represented that there was potential there. But I just think, given so many other sports that you're competing with, and with a fellow major boxing event, which is going to be the end of an era on Showtime the very next night, I just think, as a consumer, you're going to have to pick and choose. Like, if you've never seen the PFL before, is this really the card for you? I'm not entirely sure, or it is, number one. And number two, I just think when you already have the ESPN Plus model in place, and all of your other shows have taken place on ESPN Plus or linear ESPN, and that's what people are used to, and now you're switching it for the last event of the year. I think it's cause for a little bit of a concern, and I just think, even though there's several championship fights, and this is the last extravaganza, if you will, I think given the future or the remaining UFC event that's left on pay-per-view and the major boxing event the following night, I think for the consumer it's a tough decision. So
you're right. I definitely understand your point. I guess the devil's advocate thing I could say is that, I mean, number one, do they maybe not as like the amount of buys that they get, are they maybe not considering, getting as much as the UFC when you consider the fact lost my train of thought. But I will go to my other point, which is sorry, I was gonna say that when you consider the fact that they have all those sponsors, they have the Saudi Arabia money. Number two, my other point was, as maybe they're using this as kind of and last year as kind of a test model for this pay-per-view super fight division, because Kayla Harrison's gonna be in it. Obviously, Francis Ngannou is going to be in it at some point. So, or you think maybe they're just doing this as a little dip their toes in the water kind of test? And actually, let me add one more. Sorry, but let me add one more. Would it be not as bad if it wasn't $49.99? Like, what if it was $29.99 or $19.99?
I think $29.99 or $19.99 would entice a lot of people to stay home and see it. Yeah.
All right, but what about the other question about, the fact that they have all the sponsors, so maybe their bar doesn't need to be as high as the UFC's for buys, and number 2, about the super fight division.
I mean, sort of, but like for example, you bring up Kayla Harrison. Aspen Ladd was not her original opponent, so you
Right,
know
Julia Budd was supposed to be the opponent.
no, right. So my point is that you lose a portion of the storyline when you lose that fight, and that was going to be a big, selling and billing point for the PFL. So actually, I think in terms of a pay-per-view perspective, I'm not sure if they necessarily care about what Saudi Arabia thinks of it. I think, I do think in some ways it's sort of a test run, but in some ways it really isn't, because I think I don't know. I just think, as I kind of alluded to before, you've gone the whole regular season, arrogant this one way, and I feel like to change it on the consumer who's been used to the PFL, being in a certain format, and maybe this is their first year watching the promotion, and they're genuinely confused, like, oh, why all of a sudden is it, going from just ESPN Plus to pay per view? I don't think it's as streamlined as they might think it is. But I do think at the same time, though, yeah, it could be a test, but it's a matter of, okay, if they're investing so much money in the super fight division, that means the people who are competing in it better perform. Otherwise, this could end up being a waste. So,
Right.
I don't know.
All right. So I say let's dive right into the title fights. Let's talk about them. So our main event is going to be, and I verified this with the PFL website as of Sunday, along with the Wikipedia page. It seems like the main event is going to be for the lightweight title. It's going to be OAM looking for his second PFL lightweight championship as he takes on Clay Collard. Clay Collard has come very close previously. He's made the playoffs before, but he hasn't been able to achieve the win the gold. So this is going to be very interesting, and they're both, Zan, I think, two of the more popular figures with the PFL, which is why they got the main event slot.
Oh, I think so too. I think this is your classic striker versus grappler matchup, and I think whoever makes the first mistake is going to lose the fight. And even though OAM is looking to create a mini dynasty in himself, I think this is Clay Collard's destiny to win this, and I think he will. I think he stops OAM before the fourth round, and I think it's one of the most entertaining MMA fights the entire year in any promotion.
I think this will be a very entertaining fight, Zan. I do agree that this could be a fight of the year candidate. That being said, I don't know if I agree on Clay Collard. I think OAM just has a lot of momentum right now to the point where he just looks unbeatable at this point. And Clay Collard, I mean, OAM is definitely going to have the more experience. Clay Collard, he's been in both boxing and MMA, so I got to give him the credit there. I think he will crack OAM once or twice. I think he will test his chin quite a bit. I think this one is going to go to a decision, however, and I think OAM is going to control the smart cage enough that I think he will be able to defend well and get the decision win.
Okay, so you're gonna say decision 48-47, 49-46, or
48-47. I think it's going to be a close one.
okay, okay. Is you're not seeing a landslide 50-45 or anything like
No. Like I said, I think Collard's going to test him. Collard's going to test his chin in this fight. Like I said, even though we're going with two different victors here, I do think Collard is going to lay a couple of good ones in on him.
Yeah, and one point I forgot to add my reasoning on why I think Collard's going to do well and he's going to eventually win is because he's had so many months to prepare for OAM and so much tape to watch on him that I think if he can avoid being taken down, I think the longer the fight stays standing, the longer it's in Collard's favor, and I think OAM is going to have to come to him and not the other way around. So we'll see.
Fair enough. Let's go on now to the co-main event of the evening. And according to the lineup that I have, the co-main event of the evening is going to be the big boys. It's going to be Renan Ferreira taking on Dennis Goltsov.
Yeah, I just smell another rich is Dennis Goldsov knockout that nobody's gonna see coming. I understand that Renan Ferreira's had an unbelievable run. He's been dominant in nearly every finish. I mean, this is I don't know if you'd agree with this, but I think so far this has been his best regular season since joining the PFL a couple of years ago. but I just think Denis Goltsov is a different beast. He's a heavyweight that doesn't get enough praise, and I think this is a fight where I think he can really test himself, and I just don't think Ferrer's felt the kind of power that Goltsov's going to bring in. If this fight is close through 2 rounds, I could very well see the longer this fight going, the longer favoring Ferrera, and very similarly to the first fight we previewed with Collard and OAM, I think the longer the fight stays standing, the longer it favors Goltsov. So I'm actually going to go the other way too and say that Goltsov knocks out Ferrera in the second to become the PFL heavyweight champion.
And then this is where we're actually going to be in agreement because, I mean, Goltsov has been on a tear. Ferrera definitely has earned his place in the finals, but there are some question marks about it. If you remember, he lost to what's his name, Rizvan Kuniev, originally over in the regular season, but that fight got overturned. Kuniev was forced out when the PFL had all their what was it, 7, 8, 9
Oh, that's right.
fighters who got suspended from the season because of performance enhancers. He got the win over Matt Sheffel, but then Maurice Green, then I mean, he got the first round finish of him during the playoffs, but I don't believe Maurice Green was the original opponent.
No, he was not.
Marcelo Nunes.
Yeah,
Marcelo Nunes was the original opponent. So there are questions about Ferrera. Meanwhile, here's Goltsov. You know, Cesar Ferreira, boom, first round knockout. Jorgen De Castro, boom, first round knockout. Jordan Heiderman, boom, first round knockout. Actually, not first round knockout, first round arm triangle choke. I forgot it was a submission.
Right. But he did, but to counter you, he did drop him before getting that arm triangle, though. He dropped him bad to the point where you could have argued that the fight could have been stopped before he submitted him. So
yeah, fair enough. So you know what? I'm going to agree with you on Goltsov, but I say, why not? Why make anything different? Even though I respect Renan Ferreira, but I say Goltsov. I'm not even going second, Zain. I'm saying first round knockout.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't think this one gets out of 5 minutes.
Do you think this is a chance to be as a chance for Goltsov to be the PFL performance of the night, or do you think that?
Oh yeah, I think this is a performance of the night, Watcher.
Okay.
Someone could get viciously finished in this fight with the power these two have. I put performance of the night, Watcher, on either of these guys at this point, especially Goltsov.
For sure.
All right, we got the women's featherweight championship. Yes, remember the women's lightweight division wasn't brought into this season. We go to women's 145 this season. Larissa Pacheco therefore has a chance to make some history, Zan, which is why I'm interested in that. Why this isn't the co-main event. It's because Larissa Pacheco, with a win here, will become the only PFL fighter, male or female, to have win championships in 2 weight classes. She won lightweight last year for her upset of Kayla Harrison, and now all she has to do is get past Marina Makinkina, who she has defeated before, to hold the PFL gold again.
So I'm going to throw this to you. Do you think Pacheco is going into this fight thinking that this is going to be a layup to get a rematch with Harrison, or do you think that Pacheco's taking this fight seriously?
I would hope she's taking this fight seriously, Zan, because I think if there's somebody who knows what it's like to come in the underdog, having lost fights to a person before, it's Larissa Pacheco, considering who she was against last year, Kayla Harrison.
Right.
So I would hope Pacheco was smart enough to understand that kind of role and that kind of mindset. So you know what? I think everybody else then can't compare to Pacheco. I thought Amber Labrock could, but then the last couple of fights, it didn't even look that way. So
no, it didn't.
I'm going to say Larissa Pacheco, and I'm going to say third round finish.
Okay, I'm going to go earlier. I think Larissa finishes Marina in the second, but I do think that Marina surprises a lot of people, gets Pacheco on her back, and gets Pacheco in a precarious position, but Pacheco will be able to get out, get back to her feet, go back to her corner, reset, and then eventually finish in round 2. So instead of you for round 3, I will take Pacheco in round 2 to win by armbar. Is what I'll say.
Fair enough. I'll go round 3 submission. And speaking of submissions, Stan, here's a great grappling artist, Magomed Karamov. He won the PFL welterweight title in 2018. He could have won it in 2019, but had to pull out during the playoffs because of illness, I believe. And then he kind of fell short. I think it was last season. Oh, he competed in, I think it was 21 against Ray Cooper in their rematch, ended up losing to him. He has a chance to become a 2-time PFL champion, but so too does Zabadusi, who won the welterweight title last year. This is going to be a fun one. This is an underrated fight.
Well, you've been high on the Zabadusi hype train for a while. Do you think that this is his toughest fight of his career? Because I do.
I think so too. I don't think he's met a grappler like Magomed Karamov.
I don't think so either, and I do think that if Kirov wins this fight, he could easily make the strong case that he is the best MMA welterweight in the world in any promotion. Is that a bold statement, or is that
I think
fair?
that is a little bit of a bold statement. I would want to see him go against Leon Edwards to kind of prove that claim.
Well, it's fair, but compared to Leon Edwards,
Kamaru.
no, hang on. Compared to Leon Edwards, at least Magomed finishes people, though. So
fair enough. But that being said, as much as I've been on the Sabadusi hype train, like you said, I think it kind of crashes here. Give me Magomed Karamov. I don't know if I'm going to go second or third round, but I think it's a Magomed Karamov submission.
I'm going to go conservative and say that Magomed Kirov wins a very, very entertaining unanimous decision, but it's one of those close unanimous decisions that's either 48-47 or 49-46, but every single round is competitive in some way. Again, very similar to the first couple of fights we previewed. The longer that this fight stays standing, the longer it favors C. If this fight goes to the ground, it's for sure Magomed's to win. So give me Magomed.
And that's the thing. I think Magomed Karamov gets this fight to the ground quite a bit to basically get the fight in his favor. I'm gonna go the more conservative option, I should say. Go with the third round. All right, Dan. I'm curious on how we're gonna go with this one. We got Josh Silveira taking on Impa Kasaganai. You and I have both had our interviews with Impa Kasaganai as of late, and I've interviewed him twice this year. He's such a good guy. He has had quite the run. Do you think he can get past Josh Silveira?
Yeah, I mean, and you guys will be able to read my exclusive on MMA Knockout later this week, so stay tuned for that. As I was able to have a very nice 45-minute one-on-one with Impa, where I asked him quite a bit about a lot of different things, including his fight and his mindset. And one thing I wanted to mention about mindset is he is so keen and so focused on this fight. And something he told me that was very interesting is that Kill Cliff FC, they take themselves very seriously, and they are slowly but surely starting to become one of the most successful MMA gyms in the country. But one thing that he told me that I thought was very interesting is that after every single fight, his coaches are already barking in his ear what corrections he needs to make ahead of his next fight. That way he's in this mode of, okay, once I win my fight, I'm instantly on to the next one 6 weeks later. I just think this driven mindset that he has to be the best in the world, and the way he's so close to his faith, and the way he's so calm and collective about everything that he does, and just the way that he lives by the simple things in life, just simple as him bringing a carry-on bag to flights and all this sort of stuff. Something tells me that ever since Impa made it to the PFL, he has been absolutely reinvigorated. It was like once Joaquin Buckley kicked him in 2020, he just totally became a different fighter, and I feel like he is absolutely destined to destroy Silveira. He even went as far to tell me that he's going to beat Silveira in less than 10 minutes.
Oh my god. Wow. That is quite the take from Mr. Kasaganai.
Yeah, I think with the way he spoke to me and with his confidence, something tells me he's going to go in there and just absolutely.
The way he spoke with me, you are right, and it's not just that with the PFL, because remember the PFL, they have welterweight, but he wasn't really having success there, and they don't have middleweight, so he had to go up to 205 pounds, and I think he's found, and he agreed with me, he's found quite the home for him at light heavyweight.
Yeah, I'd say he looks a lot better at light heavyweight than he did at 170. Would you agree?
Absolutely, and he's been on a tear since. Do you think though, Silveira's coming into this fight off 3 first-round finishes consecutively. Do you think he's a tougher fight for him than Martin Hamlet was? Because it was kind of shocking, Zan. You have to admit that it was less than 2.5 minutes that he knocked out Martin Hamlet.
Yeah, I mean the Martin Hamlet knockout in any promotion is one of the best knockouts you will see this year. So you have a point there. I guess what I can say about it though, and this is really interesting, I just think that again, I think Silveira, in order for him to win this fight, let's think of the contrary. Yeah, I do think this could arguably be a tougher fight than the Martin Hamlet fight was. The only issue that I have in going a step further and saying that is I think if Silveira does not survive the early storm of what Impetus I can do with his just relentless energy and relentless bullish punches and kicks, knees, elbows, what have you. I don't think if Silveira can't survive that, it could be a very, very short night. And that's one of the things that I worry about the most is, if Silveira can drag Impa into deep waters and this can go into 3, 4, and 5, this fight gets interesting. But just with the way of Impa being just complete and sheer dominance, I just don't see how Silveira can keep up. And I think Silveira's fighting the best striker he's ever fought. And I just think Impa's going to go in there, take care of business. And I think he knows what Silveira has and doesn't. And I think that Silveira's gas tank will play a factor because I think the longer the fight goes, the longer that Silveira's gas tank will impact him negatively. So I just think overall the stars are aligning for Impa to go to Washington, D.C., take care of business, and then continue to take his bike ride to Nashville, Tennessee, which apparently he's very excited to do. So give me Impa to win early, give me Impa to win impressively, and give me Impa to win, I would say, 2 minutes into round 2. So
you're going with a second round.
Yeah.
I'll go with you. I'll say Impa in the second round. I think this could stretch into the third, though. I think Silveira is very tough. I do agree that I think Impa is maybe a different kind of striker that Silveira has a face, but I think Silveira does have some power that could concern, when it comes to him facing Impa. I think this is going to be a really interesting fight, though, and it's one that I have my eye on. No doubt you have your eye on, too.
Could you see a scenario where this ends in controversy or something with either a DQ, a doctor stoppage, or a controversial decision, or do you think we're not getting?
I'm not gonna try and picture that, especially on a World Championships card, Zan. I'm not gonna.
Okay, I just know in typical PFL fashion, one of these fights is gonna end is gonna end awkwardly. I just feel it.
Maybe one of the non-title fights, but I'm gonna hope that the title fight doesn't end that way. As I picked, Kayla Harrison and Ladd and Derek Brunson versus Ray Cooper are going to be on the main card. The last title fight is actually going to be the main event of the opening part of the card, or the prelims, if you will. We got the featherweight championship. We did the women's already. We got the men's now. It's going to be Jesus Pinedo, one of the biggest underdog stories of this MMA season, MMA year, let alone PFL season, taking on Gabriel Braga.
And someone who I predicted back in the summer would make it to this fight, and here he is.
Yeah, you did predict. Although the one thing that does concern me, Zan, entering this fight week, he did miss weight for that last fight.
Oh, I know.
So that really plays a big concern, and he's taking on Gabriel Braga, who great grappling and has definitely had some control in the cage, and had a fight with Chris Wade, ended with a big split decision that went in his favor. Is this Jesus Pinedo's tough test, or do you think the Brendan Loughnane fight was tougher?
I'd say Loughnane is a little bit tougher, but I think at the same time, just given Braga's pedigree, to me, this feels like a coin flip kind of fight where I just feel like it could go either way no matter who wins. What do you think?
I think so too, but I think Braga, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I guess because I'm going on the Impa train, I need to have one favorite, to crash the kind of underdog express. So I'm going to lean to Braga taking a unanimous decision in this one.
I'm going to say Pinedo wins in the third round by arm triangle and submits Braga.
That would be something if he could submit Braga.
I could just given the madness of how the PFL playoff format works, there's gonna be PFL's version of November Madness, and I think this fight gets things started in a major way and gets people blowing up their phones, either saying, "A, what the heck is PFL?" or B, someone is going to convince somebody else to say, "Hey, this is the organization of the future," and this could very well be the fight that springboards someone into being a PFL fan. So I believe that this fight will be very insane.
San, if Jesus Pinedo wins this fight, then there can be no question he would be the underdog story of this whole MMA year. If he's not already.
For sure. And I actually just think he keeps the train rolling, because MMA is the craziest sport in the world, and you never know what can happen at any given weekend. So those are our picks for the PFL World Championships. Again, the prelims are going to begin at 5 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus, followed by the pay-per-view on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. And thankfully, for those who do not have ESPN Plus, Tom, this will be available on all major cable distributors, including TV and in-demand pay-per-view. So for anyone who's excited about,
good job, good PFL, good. I love that.
So for anyone excited about DVRing the card, your wish has been granted. So
that's good on PFL, because we've talked about that frustration before, Zan, in this ESPN Plus pay-per-view, DAZN pay-per-view kind of age. But good on PFL.
Yeah, and speaking of DAZN, the event will air on DAZN with a regular base subscription in France. Or anyone who's in France who's interested in watching the card on DAZN, there you go. Your wish has been granted as well. So
very good. And of course, France is also going to get the PFL Europe Championships card, which is going to come a couple of weeks later on December 8th.
That's exactly right. Is there a special start time for that, or have they not announced it?
It's going to be at 12 p.m. Eastern here on the East Coast, 5 p.m. over in Dublin, which is where the card's going to take place. I understand it's supposed to be on DAZN in the U.S. I hate saying this to the PFL guy, I would take some precaution on that, because they haven't aired anything in DAZN, on DAZN, or anywhere on the ESPN Plus with the PFL Europe. So if you're on the US, hold the reins on the horses a bit.
Well, and I guess given what you just said, I guess in DAZN and on DAZN are interchangeable. So there you go. So
all right, let's get off PFL. We still have some other stories we got to get to. Let's talk about this weekend as well. We got Saturday, obviously big college football day, but Saturday marks a very historical point. We just had the last Bellator MMA on Showtime. We're now going to have the final Showtime boxing pay-per-view. WBC interim super middleweight title on the line. David Benavidez is going to defend against Demetrius Andrade.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a very interesting fight. I think this is a fight that's not getting enough buzz, just given what's going on, with Showtime and with its current state. But this is a very high level fight between two guys that, for sure, want to get back to that upper echelon, and doing it for an interim championship. You couldn't ask for much more, and just something tells me someone's going to get viciously knocked out in this fight, and I think it's going to be phenomenal. I would say Benavidez has a bit more experience, so give me him. But Andrade in his last couple of fights is like nothing but impressive. I think he has upset-minded tendencies going in. But again, as I alluded to before, for Showtime to go out this way with a major PBC event in Las Vegas, you couldn't ask for much more. So give me Benavidez.
I think Benavidez, you're right, will have the experience better. I know Andrade was a champion, I believe, down at middleweight or welterweight. So he definitely has championship pedigree. But I think, like you said, Benavidez has more experience with super middleweight and reigning there. I'm going to go with him by a decision.
So I have to ask you this question, Tom, because the co-main event is Charlo versus Benavidez Jr. I was just wondering, do you think, in some respect, that fight is arguably bigger than the main event, or do you think that the matchmakers got this one right, putting Benavidez versus?
I think the matchmakers got this right. I think Benavidez and Andrade is the fight. Like I said, those are two championship pedigree fighters. Charlo, isn't this the same Charlo that we said hasn't defended his belt in like 2.5 years.
This is 1,000% correct. Yes.
So I don't think he should waltz into a main event with that. I don't
Yeah.
even understand how he has the WBC title, anyways.
Yeah, because his last fight took place on June 19, 2021 against Montiel. That's how long it's been. And his Saluki fight, which is supposed to be in June of last year, got canceled. But yeah, he's been out of boxing for quite a bit.
And then he was supposed to fight Canelo, and instead his brother stepped in.
That's correct. Yep.
So I don't understand how he still has the WBC title. Speaking of Canelo, David Benavidez has been saying, he's been taking some shots at Canelo that Canelo should vacate, or he's going to come after Canelo at this fight. What do you think about that?
It's an interesting call out, and given that he'll need to find a broadcast home soon, I think it would be a great way for DAZN or whoever that new partner is going to be to build that fight up into being one of the biggest fights of the year. And if done correctly, I think could sell very well and would be one of the most entertaining fights of Canelo's career, probably dating back to a couple of years ago when Canelo fought Bivol, and as well as when Canelo fought Liam Smith. So I think that if they're able to put those two together, I think it could be a very interesting fight, and I think there would be a lot of Benavidez fans, who would be very interested in seeing can he, overcome the vicious, hellacious, accelerated power of Canelo, or could Benavidez, control him on the inside, make it a dirty fight, and then by round 8 or round 9, we have a potential for a new champion. So there's a lot of interesting puzzle pieces and a lot of interesting variables, and you're welcome, because I think I just built the storyline right there, and I think the fight sells itself. And then, of course, moving over to the other side of the world, also on Saturday, beginning in the afternoon in the United States, the highly anticipated undisputed female super lightweight championship rematch, a very closely contested fight from a couple of months ago. Katie Taylor versus Chantelle Cameron, number 2. Tom, obviously, the first fight was one of the best female boxing fights of the year. How do you think this rematch will play out? And do you think that Katie Taylor is the tools to correct the mistakes that she made in fight number 1, which obviously cost her the decision? And do you think in any way possible that Chantelle Cameron is looking past Katie Taylor, knowing that potentially a major mega fight between her and Amanda Serrano is down the line? So overall, what do you think of the fight?
I don't think Chantelle Cameron can really look past Katie Taylor, because she's obviously going to have the questions surrounding her on if the first fight was a fluke. And I think everyone considering Sam, I mean, look, this is a rare case, Sam. When do we see the challenger on the left side? That's rare. That's safe for superstars. And that, like, the last time I remember something like that was Canelo when he was going for the super middleweight title. I mean, yeah, no. The super middleweight title against Rocky Fielding in like 2018 was the last time I could think of such a thing.
Yeah, you want to talk about rare star power from Eddie Hearn's perspective and how much he supported Katie Taylor. That's as star power esque as you could get. So that's a very, very good point to bring up. I
think. Well, let me ask you, who do you think has more pressure here? Katie Taylor to get the belt back, or Chantelle Cameron to prove that the first fight wasn't a fluke?
I would say Taylor, because I think the entire boxing world is clamoring for part 2 of and just Serrano versus Katie Taylor Fun Fest that took place in the spring of 2022, which I think is a rematch that everyone wants to see. So
yeah, I want to see that, and that's why, Zan. Honestly, I don't think Chantelle Cameron. I know you said, like, could she be looking past and look to Serrano? I don't think she should. I don't think she is, and I don't think she can afford that, because if she loses to Katie Taylor, I don't think she's gonna get the kind of rematch like Katie Taylor got here, because they're gonna want to make Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano.
1,000%. Yeah,
So she can't afford that. And honestly, I think maybe it's because I want to see Taylor Serrano. I'm gonna go with Taylor by decision. I think Taylor gets her belt back.
And another interesting point too, you can't have a situation where Chantelle Cameron wins a lackluster decision, because then that tells Matchroom that they cannot sell a Serrano fight, given how poorly this fight could potentially go. But I'm going to go with you. I'm going to say that Katie Taylor answers all those questions wins a very close, action-packed, epic decision in Ireland in front of her people, and I think it has the potential to be one of the best women's boxing title fights in several years. Obviously, we've seen what Clarissa Shields can do here in America, but when you want to talk about truly who are the best female boxers in the world, it's these three: Serrano, Taylor, and Cameron. They're all in the same weight class. They're all fighting each other. If you want to talk about a golden age of women's boxing, this is it right here. This is easily one of the biggest rematches you can make. We're gonna get a chance to see it, and I think it is going to be a wonderful encore to what was an unbelievable first fight. And I think I expect nothing less than just an absolute, undisputed, and unbelievable spectacle. And yeah, I do think Taylor comes out on top, just outboxes her just enough to win a very close 10-round decision in a fight that I think a lot of people are very excited about. So,
For sure. All right, very quick headlines. We got some headlines here. Fury Usyk. Obviously, nothing really has changed. It's reported to be official. We have a date now officially, February 17th. So, if I'm not mistaken, Zan, that's President's Day weekend here in the US. So, it's going to be during a holiday weekend, which big ups to those guys on making it official for that day. Obviously, Usyk wanted it in December. But yeah, we're going to get an undisputed heavyweight title fight. Holding my breath that we actually will.
yeah, holding my breath actually will too, considering this fight was teased for February of 2022, and it did not occur that weekend. It was the weekend of the Tommy Fury Jake Paul fight in Saudi Arabia, so hopefully this fight doesn't fall apart yet again. But now that we know a date, now that we know a location, the countdown is on, and I'm very interested to see what ESPN and Top Rank decide to do to build this fight, because you could argue that this is the biggest heavyweight title fight since the days of Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield. And I know that's going back a very long time, but this has that feel of you're going to remember where you were when these two fought. And I'm very excited to see how it plays out. My early pick is still Fury, but again, and I can only count down the days to February 17th, because you want to talk about boxing Super Bowl. This is without question the antithesis of it. So
Right. So the last weekends and before the weekend before this, you're gonna have UFC pay-per-view, I think. You're gonna have the Super Bowl, and then you're gonna get this right afterwards in the next weekend. That's a fantastic February.
absolutely, not only a fantastic February for fight fans, but a fantastic February for sports fans in general. So no question about it. Everybody wins, and these two should make boatloads and boatloads of money. That's gonna be mind boggling to even comprehend by the time the purses officially come out. So
I love it. All right. We also have Zan, a story that's kind of exploded here. So Dana White was on a podcast, and he told this story in which he said, obviously, Zan, last week, pardon me, a couple weeks ago with UFC 295 at the Garden, you had former President Donald Trump there, Kid Rock there. They did that entrance again with those two and Dana White coming out the Kid Rock song. I think it was American Badass.
yep,
And basically, Dana White put up a social media post about Donald Trump on his and the UFC's social media accounts. It was Vio Fon's podcast, by the way,
yep,
and he Dana, according to a story that he said on the podcast, said a sponsor, he didn't name the sponsor, told him to take down the post, and Dana basically said "f off" and continued on his comments saying during the podcast about you can vote for whoever you want, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to choose, freedom of vote, and he basically said, "Yeah, no," and he didn't name the sponsor. There are
nope,
a couple of different options out there, though, that I'm a little suspicious about. Because here's where it comes down to, Sam. Number one, which you told me before, potentially Peloton, because conveniently Pelotons will be taken out of the UFC Performance Institute not long after this.
right.
Number two, Bud Light, because they just, they partnered with the UFC after coming off, an image damaging controversy when they, oh, what's their name? They selected for a spokesperson.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. That's basically the crux of it. Yeah.
And basically I said, well, I don't know if it would be them, and if it was them, that would be kind of stupid considering. Oh, Dylan Mulvaney.
Yep.
After the whole controversy with Dylan Mulvaney, and then number three, potentially Modelo, because I mean, Zan, how many commercial breaks in the UFC do you see Modelo? So you hear big sponsor, you think, 2 and 2 could be four.
Yeah, I would say Modelo for sure, and it's definitely not Venom considering that that's how the fighters walk out. So yeah, it definitely has to be some sort of beer sponsor of some sort, and I think Modelo is a very solid guess. So
So we
yeah.
don't know, we don't know anything about this, but it's another funny Dana White story, I guess.
Yeah, it's another funny Dana White story. My take on it is if you've been following the UFC for a long time, this should not come as a surprise. He has no filter, and
And
if
he's a friend of Trump's. We
yeah,
talked about the history of UFC, Dana, and Trump, with
yeah,
Trump's casino hosting some of the early UFCs in Jersey.
yeah, and he's a friend of Trump, and also Dana wears his heart on his sleeve. So if he doesn't like something that you say, he's going to call you out for it, and this should come as a surprise to absolutely no one. And truly, no matter what side of the fence you are on politically, it really isn't anybody's business who anybody votes for, because truly, in my opinion, it shouldn't. I don't know. I just feel like sometimes it doesn't define the person that you are, and if he feels like he wants to live his life that way and he doesn't really agree with the sponsor stance, then I really don't have an issue with it. And I know I wrote a story about it, but I just feel like he's the one sports commissioner, or if you will, that's going to wear his heart on his sleeve, and that's exactly what he did.
Right.
So
And Sam, not also to make mention, this is also the same man who conveniently, after Trump lost to Biden in the 2020 election, this is the man that conveniently, on the day of inauguration, booked a rare Wednesday UFC fight night card on Fight Island in the afternoon.
that's exactly right.
So, do you really think he's gonna listen to a sponsor say take down this social? He's not gonna do that.
No. And by the way, for those curious, the social media post is still up. So
Right. Well, I'm not surprised. And like I said, considering a couple of these sponsors, I don't know if they, it's funny. Dana White, because when the sponsors of, these major league organizations then say something, the major league organizations have to react. Dana White and the UFC are the only ones that I can think of where the sponsor says something and Dana and the UFC basically can flip them the bird.
yeah, I think they're the only sports league that can that maybe the PFL will eventually have that power, but for now the UFC is the only promotion that can realistically do it. So
Now, that being said, last story here. Oh, I'm sorry. This was not a good card. And
no,
Brendan Allen, this was a one-sided main event. I
yeah,
like Paul Craig, but this was bad.
this was bad. This was a one-sided main event, and honestly, I don't even think this fight should have been made considering what Allen's winning streak was looking like going in. He needs to fight a lot tougher competition, and I'm not saying Paul Craig isn't a stud because he is, but he did not fight like the Scottish the Scottish killer, if you will, that he's shown the last few years. And I just think Brendan Allen's on a completely different level. His wrestling is better. His jiu-jitsu has obviously gotten exponentially better considering committed with the rear naked choke. And I think this was just a business trip for Brendan Allen, and he's going to go back to the drawing board and he's going to see what's next. But I
Yeah.
I will see 2024 being the biggest year of his career, because given how fluid the middleweight division is about to become with DDP fighting Sean Strickland and the uncertainty of Israel Adesanya, he's going to be right in that title picture, whether you like it or not. So
for sure. And what's funny, Zan, is he was only ranked number 10. Paul Craig number 13. He was ranked under Jack Hermanson. I think I would have Brendan Allen above Jack Hermanson in my rankings. So
I think so too, and I think that will definitely change come by the time this airs, considering that the MMA media votes on the rankings every Tuesday. So for sure there's going to be a shakeup in that regard, I would think.
I would hope so. And then Brendan Allen, if he would be number 9. I mean, Zan, you're right. I would want to see Brendan Allen. Look at some of the names above him. Roman Delise, Marvin Vittori. Even if I have to say Paulo Costa, even though I don't know if he's worth the ranking that he is right now.
I would argue that he beats all three of those guys that you just mentioned.
I can see it. I can see him being Dildiz. I definitely see him being Costa. I think Vettori would give him a little bit of a challenge, but but like you said, I think Brendan Allen, he needs to face if 2024 is going to be as big for him as you said it is, especially considering, like you said, the whole shake up the middleweight division. He needs to fight somebody just shy of the top 10 next.
One last win on Vettori that I forgot to mention is I think that fight comes down to whether or not it's a 5-round fight or a 3-round fight. That's what I think, because I think you can see two totally different outcomes depending on how the fight is structured. So
fair enough. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of episode 62, part 2 of the MMA Outsiders. Thank you for bearing with us with the two-parters, considering all the stories we had to get through, the potential end of Bellator, the sale with the PFL going out, the PFL World Championships, and Showtime Boxing's last pay-per-view coming up. So we had a lot to get through. The hope and the plan is that next week we will be back to our normal schedule. And as I say, it didn't help with the short week, too, which shook the whole network schedule up. So the hope is that next week we will be back to our normal Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific airtime. And also want to give a little shout out because I believe we are going to air. Yeah, we are airing on Monday night this week. So in a couple of hours, actually, pardon me, in just 1 hour, stay here on the Empty the Bench network because we are going to have a special live stream. ETV Network is going to present Monday Night Football in about an hour. We're going to have Eagles Chiefs. We're going to have a little watch along. And that watch along will be presented by our sponsor, Football Friday sponsor over at Wolf Spreads. So Nick will be there. Zain will be there. I'll try to get there. I'm not going to be a guarantee, but most of the Football Friday crew will be there. So should be a fun time.
For sure, it should be a fun time. And whether you like football or not, we're just going to have some fun, have some laughs, place a couple bets on Wolf Spreads, and try to relax and arguably watch the biggest Monday night game of the season. So if you have time to tune in as a bit of an alternative means for your Monday Night Football viewing experience, come join us, ask some questions, and we'll see what we can do. So for sure, tune in.
So very quickly, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. Make sure to follow us across social media at MMA Outsiders ETB, and make sure to follow the network on social media at ETB Network. To my right, as always, my co-host, Zain Bando, staff writer for BJPenn.com and MMA Knockout. You can follow him on social media at ZainBando99. I'm Tom Albano, contributor for MMA News and Fanside at MMA, and with the PFL. So I will be updating the website, working with them during Championship Friday coming up. So be with me for that. You can follow me on social media at Thomas J. Albano. Shout out to all of you listening on our audio-only platforms at Acast and others. If you are listening on those platforms, make sure to come to our YouTube home, youtube.com/ETB Network. Getting closer to 630 subscribers, getting towards that 650, 700 mark. And thank you all for your support. And make sure to go to etbpodcast.com for more information about the ETB Network and blogs from some of our contributors. But that's going to do it. So for Zain, I'm Tom. We'll see you next week for episode 63. Take care, everyone.
Take care. We'll see you there. And before we get out of here and tell you to enjoy the fights, even though there is no UFC this weekend, we just want to remind you to be Joe Pyfer.
Still be Joe Pyfer. And if you are interested in, tuning in for the Eagles Chiefs live stream, we'll see you in about an hour.
See you then.